Good afternoon. This is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is the market wrap for February 22nd, 2019. We are up about 0.5% here on the Qs. Yeah, just about 0.5%. We got about 10 minutes left. And SPY. Now remember, coming into today, we had a bit of a pullback yesterday, but we didn't break support, so we were still bullish. Today we gapped up and got some nice follow through here on the Qs and SPY. Like I said yesterday, and we've been saying the long term here, we'll need to take out this pivot on the daily before we can start talking about losing the uptrend here. So let me just give you the numbers on this pivot. 267.80 on the SPY there, and on the Qs we are looking at 166.57. So that would have to get broken. We can look for a change in the short-term bias if we can break below this hourly base here on the Qs and SPY. So that'll be our first signal to lose the bullish bias. But because that hasn't happened as we've had this hourly uptrend, we've just been bullish. So we're bullish going into today, and we will be bullish going into Monday. Okay, so I'll continue to, even if our bias doesn't change, outline where it would, so that we will be prepared when it does. Okay, but for now, we remain bullish. All right. We'll see where the market closes out, because I think we will be run into the close here pretty soon. But we'll go over everything that I called today. So was pretty active today. And so you did see kind of a lot from me because I thought we had a lot of gaps to work with. There were a couple that really moved nicely. But, if you followed Sammy on the DPLO, you did really, really well on the DPLO. Had a breakdown here at the open. I don't know how. I kind of missed it. It was hard to get filled, I think. So there were some challenges with this, but the follow through is hard to argue with it. With this really nice gap down here. Okay, so there were some things, so I really wanted to try and get some nice plays there for the room and for myself, of course. But we'll go through today's calls. All right, so the first thing I called was the CEOT, and you can probably see that it got canceled. But what happened was that we had a nice gap down on the COT. Okay, gap, and then it sold off and broke this base to the left. And I wanted to play it on a sell setup. So this was the sell setup we got right here. So it came in hard, and we started to retrace. So under 1480, as you can see on the call, under 1480 by 15. And this was 1497 there. But it took out the stop first, so I canceled it. So you can see just a few minutes later, it got canceled. It looked like it was going to trigger. Looked pretty good. Looked good on the 1 minute too. That was actually the time frame that I was looking at, but you get the picture here on the 2. And took it out. So we kind of moved on from it. There was a good play. Now, I don't play this sell setup here, and I don't play these sell setups because the uptrend is now, or the downtrend is now damaged. It's now in an uptrend on the smaller time frames, putting in higher highs and higher lows once it fails on this sell setup. Okay, so, I'm not going to play this and get this little scalp here. Or for me, based on my management, this probably would have been a losing play if I'd chosen to short it there. Because it wouldn't have reached my target. But this one eventually followed through nicely. And again, like I said, I know this followed through nicely, but because of the nature of being in this uptrend, I wouldn't play it. So ran into some resistance there, I guess, and got sold. And from there, actually made its way back all the way to the lows. Okay, so once this is now back in a downtrend, which we have a high, a low, a lower high, and a lower low, this should have been played. I just, for some reason, lost track of this one. Once it got this breakout failure, it might have been that when I saw it, it looked like it was going to be going higher, and I didn't have it on a chart anymore for some reason, and then missed it. So this was good. So if you want to look at this COT, if you are like me, waiting for the trend to be established for playing it, this is your play right here. Under 1445 by 1460, so about a 15-cent stop on the COT there on this. Would have been a 5-minute sell setup. Okay. So unfortunately, didn't catch that one. That one was really good. That was one of the better ones in the afternoon, I thought, here. Okay, on the COT. But, we tried to call it earlier. That one didn't trigger. Okay. And then we moved on to the PAGS in the morning. Okay. PAGS was transitioning out of a downtrend here this morning. I like the gap on the PAGS, gapping over resistance, coming from a red bar here. So I like, there's a little bit of shock value in there, clearing the resistance. I liked it higher. Just didn't get the timing right on the PAGS. Here was the call on the PAGS. Okay, and you can see we did have to trail it a bit early because I didn't like the way that it was acting. So here is the PAGS. Okay, it was transitioning out of this base here, and I was looking to play this higher. Okay, over 25 was the whole number. So over this topping tail, yeah, that was 25. Okay, we got triggered in right here. And then I didn't like that the volume came in, was starting to look like a breakout failure, so we trailed it to 90 there. So small loss on the PAGS, and that would have stopped anyway. This is a lot like the TROX that we played recently. It's that kind of transition out of a morning downtrend on a nice gap up here. Okay, so this TROX initially was moving lower, kind of retested, and then once it got over and established an uptrend here, right, that's when we were looking to play it long. So same idea here. Targets on the PAGS, we were looking for high of the day. Ended up not getting there from our setup. It actually needed an additional setup after the shakeout, and then got nice follow through there on the PAGS. So you can see, like I think a lot, and you'll see this, on a lot of these plays. Sometimes you just don't get the timing right. The idea is correct. I don't think this was a good short. Maybe for you, if your targets just happen to be a retest of this pivot, sure, I'm sure someone can make money on a small scalp like that. But, I was looking for follow through on this transition, liked the gap, liked it for higher, but just didn't get the timing right. And that ended up not following through on our entry, but additional entries would have worked just fine. So that was the PAGS, which unfortunately was a small loss there. All right, and then we moved on to the EGO. Okay, EGO. So you can see I was trying to really get something going here today. Not making a mess of things, but really trying to pick on good setups and some good opportunities here. Here was the EGO. Now, the EGO, we had a 5-minute base here inside of a 15-minute buy setup. Was looking to get this to break out and retest the highs. So I was looking for a retest of the highs. If you recall, earlier in the week, we played the TYLE, which is the same setup here. A little bit even sloppier on the TYLE, but you see it moved up. We bullied the gap on the daily, right? We gapped down, we bullied the gap on the daily, got through the resistance, right? And then once we break out of this base on the TYLE, once we break out of this base, right, I'm looking for a retest of the highs, right? So that got a nice retest. Oh yeah, I think I was on the mic, or I was recording when this trailed out actually on the TYLE. So yeah, so this is the same idea here. We get this nice base, and then once we break out of the base, look for a retest of the highs, and maybe even more. So on the EGO, we got this bit of a breakout, and then starting to look a little bit like the PAGS would turn into a breakout failure. So, unfortunately on this one, when you see the volume did come in, not overwhelming volume, but, this immediately put in a topping tail, was looking a lot like the PAGS, and I said, go ahead and kill it. At 11:55, 9:55 my time, and so we killed it at 51 there before it would have stopped. So, I was feeling like we were getting some good setups, but I wasn't liking the way that things were triggering, and so I thought that was kind of a little bit difficult. But kept at it. I liked this DBX here as it was doing a base. We can look at the gap here. I was looking for the DBX for some follow through lower here. Was breaking this uptrend. It is into some support. I thought that was probably the most challenging part about this DBX, gapping into a grind. But I like that it was staying weak. So it was giving us this base here, and that's where the numbers came from. Underneath 23.15 with a stop at 23.50. Okay, and then ended up rallying past 23.50. So as you saw, 30 minutes after it was called, I had to cancel it. So the DBX ended up being not a non-play there. Let's see what it's done so far. Nothing, just stayed sideways. So that's fine. But yeah, I was hoping that, I like that the 20 MA lost the extension. We're basing here. I was looking for if we break this base to get reach new lows there. But that was canceled. And then the last play of the day here, and it's going to be the same story as kind of my day in general today. So that was one of the most frustrating days of the year for me. We had this MGA, was basing, was looking to see if this would break out and lead us to new highs. Here was the gap on the MGA. I like the void that was to the left here, right? I wanted to see more retracement of this red bar here to the left. The way that it kind of carved out this bottom is a little bit like, let's see, was it the SU? Yeah, similar. Kind of we carved out this big bottom here, and then we got a gap up on the SU. What about maybe the the CNDT? So you can see the CNDT we played on this day, right? I guess this was Tuesday, and ended up being a pretty nice long there. I wanted to see more retracement of that red bar, but I think we only got a couple hours out of that, even though we were shooting for much more. But on the MGA today, wanted to see more follow through on this gap. They reported earnings to test resistance there, and it just so happened that I think the market started to come in, was failing on a very similar 15-minute buy setup. So we just got triggered in. The entry, as you see, is over 90. Triggered us in, only got to 95 there, and then started to falter a little bit. So haven't seen these things not work all day. We trailed it early to 70. So another kind of small loss there on the MGA. So tough day. I had some good ideas, I thought, on the COT and the DBX, and they the COT, the DBX, the PAGS, ended up following through, but just didn't get the timing right. And so, you got to put all the pieces together really to come away with a winner here. So just wasn't able to put them all together. So yeah, definitely frustrated. And I told the room too, like in the afternoon, that it's like days like this where it's hard to really continue to try and stay focused and help the room find ideas, even though I know that my calls aren't getting good follow through. And so I understand it's like days like today where you have some people who lead rooms who don't trade because they feel like taking actual trades will detract from their ability to be a good moderator, to help the room scan and lead them. But for me, I if I have confidence in the plays that I find and the things that I want to play and the setups, then I should play them myself. So that I do, and so it's going to be days like today that are a little bit challenging. But I got a good question, which was, what do I do when you have a tough day, and what is your approach? Like, and some people are like, oh, do you go out for a run, or do you go out and play a game of golf, or do you go to the pool? For me, the thing that really works the best is logging everything. Once I put everything into the trade tracker, that honestly does more for me feeling better or recovering than anything else. Because if I say I just want to go and like distract myself, or go to the gym or do something else, it really doesn't help, because I feel like I'm just avoiding, and so I know that it's still going to be lingering there. So the best thing for me is to go ahead and face it head on, log the trades, right, figure out if there are any mistakes made. And then from there, once it's in the trade tracker, I can look at, what adjustments I need to make. So I can look at, okay, is it because Fridays I struggle the most, which, from my trade tracker, Fridays are my only day where I struggle. And then, look at what about time of day? What about time frame of entry? And look at all these things to say, okay, if I'm going to make adjustments to do more of this, which is making money, and less of this, which is costing me money, I don't think anything else is really going to make me feel ready to go on Monday than doing that. Okay. And so, even if it's just not, even if you have a streak where it's 2-3 days where you have a couple losses, you can't seem to catch a winner, that's when you really want to go back to your trade journal, your trade tracker, and then make the adjustments based on the data. Okay. So if you're taking some big losses at the open with slippage, then you can say, okay, I'm going to shift to a larger time frame or a little bit later in the day, or reduce my size at the open, right? If it's, this strategy isn't working, okay, then I'm going to hold off on that. It's costing me money until I start to see it working, but I'm going to focus on the strategy that's doing the best. Okay, so that's what you want to do. I think there's a little bit of a temptation to say, well, I'm going to try something new, or I'm going to be creative and just make it up. I think a lot of times when you're like in the heat of, trading and the market's still open is when you start to, and you're struggling, think, well, let me try this, or let me get revenge on this, or, well, if it's not a long, then it must be a short. And so those are the times where you don't want to be creative, where you can start to, enter into things and be like, wait, why am I in this? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the strategy here? So that's not the time you want to be creative. If you're reading the market right, the market's telling you that you're doing well, that you got a good read on things, that you're in the flow of the market, then that's when you can kind of experiment a little bit. But it's when you have a rough day or a rough string of days where you really want to go back and say, okay, now let's simplify, go back to the things that we know that are working, reduce the things that are not working. Okay, so, I think these days, as much as it's probably a better selling tactic or better advertising for the room to only come in here and say, look at this winner and look at this other winner and look at that winner, and just show you charts that move, show you where the low is and the high is, and say, can't you do that? Don't you want to be in a play that moves $2? That would probably only work, I guess, for some of the kind of novice or beginner traders to say, oh yeah, that's great. We can all do that, and we'll all get out at 26.57, right? But, all these trades, I call them before they trigger, right? And so, these are the things that actually, right, can provide some kind of value when you call the trades ahead of time. Otherwise, if we're all looking at stuff after the fact and saying, oh, wouldn't it be great? That really, I think, only serves the purpose of kind of, I guess, impressing people. But I want to make sure we're real here, right? And the only way to not ever have any losses is to not take any trades. I think there's just no way around that, right? There's just, in order to take a trade, we know it's a game of probability. So that's just the way it is. So, just wanted to go over that. I think it was just a tough day. So if there was a time to go over it, this is really the situation here. It's not that everyone did poorly. Some people had a great trade on, I think, the Roku this morning, that just kept going all day. So that was huge. Like I showed you, the DPLO was great. And so it's not that there weren't trades to be had or today was impossible. It's just one of those days where you're just kind of on the wrong side of things, or maybe I think on some of these just a little bit early in getting into them. But we will, use the weekend to kind of review and make some adjustments and be ready to go next week. I thought last week was pretty good, and the first half of this week was pretty good. Really just kind of today, and then yesterday I wasn't very active. Just struggled a little bit. So we'll be back at it on Monday, though. We'll see what the market brings us. Hopefully, for some of you, hopefully you did well. Like I said, you took some of the other calls that did really well. But if you also happen to run into a tough stretch, or maybe, in the future run into a tough stretch, it's good to know, how am I going to work my way through it? What's the general approach and what kind of adjustments I should make, okay? Because I think realistically, if you're trading real money, then we're all gonna go through that from time to time, and we've all been there. All right. So, hope everyone has a great weekend. All right, and we will be back at it on Monday, and I will talk to you then. Have a good weekend.